Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke, and today I am, those of you who, well actually I usually have the regular crew who joins me for this in the morning. There's usually a regular group of people who sign on at some point, and good morning Melissa. So this morning I was up quite early this morning, as you can see. Normally when I'm doing this live stream is before I've had my shower, so today you can see my hair is wet. So I wanted to get things done today, and it's been a little bit hectic. It's funny because I've been sleeping well at night, but because I'm really kind of in this hurry up mode and trying to. I have a lot of irons in the fire right now, but I have to wait for a lot of things to find out where they're going to go. I did find out today that the Rouhani class that I have scheduled for the 8th has now been postponed to the 22nd. Apparently, the instructor sent out an email when I messaged her because there's a deposit and a payment kind of thing, and she just said, she says, did you get the message that it's not till the 22nd? And I said, no, I didn't get that message, so I'm very glad that I emailed her. So that'll be, in a way that kind of works out because I'm hoping to do Rouhani. I'm hoping to see if I can do Rouhani in person for some people, maybe in certain places. And the people that I would like to ask about it are, good morning, Sam, would probably not be around until after the 15th or 16th of the month. So, yeah, this is I'm playing a waiting game, in other words. And, it's just it's very tense with certain things right now. Because, like I said, this is a very lean period. And I'm a Taurus, so I don't do well with not having all of that kind of stuff arranged and settled. So anyway, I don't want to belabor that with you guys. It's just it's something that will be sorted out. But it does bring me to the topic that I was going to talk about a little bit today. I had some other really weird dreams last night. I keep having dreams that my mother's house is we were at my mother's house for an event, like a picnic or something where we would normally all go outside. And together, the people who are left in my family, there's very few left at this point. But where we were there with good morning, and then where I was there with my my sister, and she seemed kind of disgruntled, and she said, "Well, we're not going to be able to have it outside because they're working outside." And when I went outside, this is a dream, by the way, if you just joined late. And when we went outside, when I went outside, they were literally building like a hotel outside. But it wasn't like one big hotel building. It was like one of those ones where you have the different units. But I realized it was all on my mother's property and everything. And I thought, well, they kind of look nice, but her yard is gone. So weird. Hotels generally in dreams have a lot to do with when you feel like you're in a transitory state. So when you're because it's a place that you go that's, that can be nice, and it can be, sometimes people go to hotels to get away from things, to escape from things, but it's also a place that you can be when you're not in your own home, so when you're in transit. So interesting dreams about that. And I had this dream, I don't know, there was another weird part to it where suddenly I was at a Hindu ceremony and I was dressed in a very light blue salwar kameez, and, it was, and I didn't realize I was until a girl said something to me about it in the dream. And so I don't know, it was a very, very, very interesting dream this morning. But I did of course my dream cards on this particular reading. And the third one that I got, and there's a couple interesting things about this, because the card I got is called, I don't have the image card with me, but the word card is moving, okay? And I felt like this is somewhat relevant to some of the things we've been talking about recently, so I wanted to bring that one up today. And what was odd is that when I pulled the cards, it was still semi-dark out when I pulled the cards. I'm very funny in the morning. When it's dark before the sun's come up, I refuse to turn the lights on in the house unless I really have to. So I always have a flashlight, a little tiny mag light, that I always turn on when I want to look at things in the morning. It's just kind of a weird thing that I do. But we had, so when I drew the cards, the third card that came out, I thought, it had like a kind of a purplish triangle in the middle of it, and there was an image. And when I first saw it, without really getting a good look at it with the light, I thought it was a card that is called Stasis. And I thought, this is a card about being stuck. But then when I looked at the number and everything, it was the card of moving and not the card of stasis. And I thought, well, that's odd. I mean, did I pull the wrong card? But then when I looked, I was like, oh no, I completely saw the wrong image. So it's weird. Okay, so, and this is what I've said about dream analysis, is that sometimes that's why even the dream itself, stuff even outside of the dream can be important. Because to me, it's like, okay, I'm expecting to see that I'm stuck, but it's actually saying that I'm moving, right? So, interesting, how that can be interpreted. That's a type of a synchronicity that can be incorporated into something like that. But the words on this particular card, this is part of the journey card, right? and that is kind of something we've been talking about, not worrying about the destination, but just worrying about the journey. So really just kind of taking things one day at a time, especially if things are challenging, And it says, to move is life itself. To cease moving is to be no more. A noble beauty resides in the stiffness of a corpse. Okay, that's kind of a weird image. Yet we seem to see the beloved as breathing, expecting signs of life. Not sure I agree with that, but okay. Feel in all your body and psyche the ecstasy of energy taking you onward. Go at the right pace and life will be full. Remain static and things may shake you up. Go too fast and you will miss the way by going nowhere in a hurry. To move is to let life force take you where you are meant to go. And then it says, your task is to practice seeing yourself as energy more than substance in many areas of your life. Okay? So, interesting card there. I mean, there was two other ones too, but that one really stood out to me because when we are in transitions, especially if we feel like, good morning, Leela. Especially when we're in transitions and we feel that we are in a state where there's an emergency situation. Like, oh my gosh, I have to do this thing by tomorrow and I'm not prepared, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. As this month has been with me, I'm like, am I gonna have the money for this? Am I gonna have that? Like, the kind of things Taurians worry about. So basically it's saying, because one of the first things that you end up doing when you're in a situation where you feel like there is there's a lack, is that you immediately want to rush in and fix the problem. Like, we have a trauma response. We jump right in and we're like, all right, I'm gonna do something right away. I'm gonna run out and get like the first job I can get, out there. We do things like that because we are in a hurry to fix the problem, and obviously, I mean, part of that is, we're responsible human beings and want to take care of our obligations and things, or whatever's going on. And we want to do the right thing at the right time, right? But here's the thing, it's but sometimes we do that, we jump in, and then the thing is, if we had just waited a little bit, then, and given the situation time to breathe a little bit, then you would see what's supposed to come in, or how something is going to be solved. Sometimes the way we think it needs to be solved is not the way, because we just kind of run into this automatic thing of, it's almost like it's fight or flight, really. It's really a form of that. Either we kind of go like this and try to pretend it's not happening, or we go the other way and we're like, okay, I need to get into the fray and deal with this immediately. And again, it's understood that there's different situations, and sometimes you really do need to have an immediate response to something. But sometimes that response, again, it depends kind of on where you are. So relevant. Yeah, it's funny because you're saying, yeah, that's so relevant, and it's like I'm hearing that from a lot of people. I've gotten a lot of messages from different friends this week who have been in situations. They're not exactly like mine because their work situations and everything are different, but nonetheless, there's still these kind of sudden situations where it's like, oh my God, I have to respond and I have to do something now. I need to contact a lawyer now. I need to do this now, and and it's kind of a situation where people are trying to, it's feel like you have to work something out right away, but oftentimes we need to take time to pause. We want to react. But if we react too fast and out of a place of fear of what we think is going to be the worst possible result, then oftentimes what happens is that we are, then we end up kind of regretting the action that we took. We take that certain job or we do something or whatever, and then we go, oh crap, I shouldn't have done this. This is terrible. So I think the expression is not jumping from the frying pan into the fire. You want to think about things. So when I'm seeing this thing about pacing, as I had said sort of at the beginning of this live stream, I think before a lot of people signed on, was that I have situations where I'm like, okay, I need a solution to something. I have certain things that I'm obliged to do by certain dates, and I don't necessarily have what I need to do that right now. So I'm like, okay, so I've got, again, you immediately go out and you do take certain actions to try to correct the issue. But oftentimes waiting for the results of that doesn't happen right away. You have to give something time. Like I was saying earlier, my Rahani class has been delayed by 2 weeks. So I'm like, okay, I was hoping that I could incorporate Rahani, start practicing with people, and hopefully maybe by the end of June being able to incorporate it into my practice along with Reiki. But now it's probably going to be something that's pushed off till July. I do have quite a few volunteers for Rahani. I've had a lot of friends say, hey, if you want to practice on me, I'm right there. Thank you. I'm trying to fine tune my approach. Yeah, and you know what? I think you're definitely not alone in that. I mean, because it's hard to know always what the right thing is to do at the right time. Like for me this week, I've been saying like, okay, well, part of the problem I have is that, like I said, my teaching job doesn't start up again till September. And last year I had like a big chunk of money from somewhere that really held me through the summer until I started getting paid at my other job again. And so now I'm like, okay, but I feel I have Saturn in Pisces, and right now it's over my 10th house. So it's almost like Saturn saying, okay, so what are you going to do to make your dreams a reality? What are you going to do to, this is what you want to do with your life. You don't want to work the traditional 9-to-5 job. You don't want to do that. How are you going to make it work? So you're on the spot, go, and you're just kind of like, oh my God. But the reminder that you always get is that you are capable of doing it. You have the skills, you have the resources. A lot of times though, one of the things that stops us a lot of times is we're afraid of making a mistake. That said, we also do want to pause a little bit, step back and think about what we're doing first. Saying, okay, what's, not always, I want to say in terms of your goal. I mean, obviously we may have certain goals. I certainly have certain goals. I'm sure everybody here has certain goals that they're trying to meet. But then the question becomes, okay, what is the path to that goal? And is the same old path always the same way to do it? Are there other ways to do it? So for instance, I'm just giving you the example from my situation. I'm saying to myself, okay, well, for my business, are there certain grants that I'm eligible for? Is there something I can do with, is refinancing my house or something an option right now to kind of get more cash in? Is something like, is getting a business loan an option? Like what other things what other possibilities other than just run out and get a job? So, and those are just some of the things I'm thinking about. I am doing some things, like I have a lot of back stock on my academic book sitting downstairs from different events that I've been to. So I'm probably going to start selling those and getting rid of those to people. And I'll probably be posting about that soon for people who are interested in that. But it's, so I've got different things that I'm doing. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. I'm selling things off in my house that I don't use, that I don't want or don't use. And that also is working me towards a different goal, which is to move overseas, because that's really what I want to do. And I can't have a whole ton of stuff. It's kind of like you have to empty out a little bit regardless of anything else. So I'm like, okay, well, this is the time to get busy and to do that. And like I said, I am going to be offering some classes. I've been talking with a few people about what it is I might want to offer. Because again, these are, I guess the point being here is that these are resources that I have. It's like, okay, you have all these degrees, you have all these certificates, like do something with them, do something. I mean, I'm doing things like this, but do something that people can come to and participate in that kind of a way. And so I've been, like I said, I've been tossing around a lot of ideas. I'd love to do a totally free university for people, but I can't I mean, totally free is just not something on the table for me. So I said, well, try to do something that's very low cost. I've been talking about this for a while. And also, just with regard to what I do in my coaching practice, just doing things for meditation, psychic development, stuff like that, I think I would like to do some work over on that side as well. So really it's a matter of looking at what the possibilities are and then trying to kind of go with the flow of a plan. If you feel like you're being blocked in some place, then maybe that's not the way to go, and go in a different direction. So movement is all about patience. It's about having patience in certain situations, because sometimes we have a knee-jerk reaction from the immediate panic of what's going on. And then, so it's a matter of taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and assessing your situation for real. So you're kind of like, okay, I mean, yes, clearly there's something that has to be done, but do you have to do it this second or else? I mean, that's the first thing. Like, how much time do you have? Okay, so take that time, think about things. And then if you're going to move, it's back to kind of the Taoist thing. You're moving with the flow of life, the flow of the energy of life. So see where it's taking you. I just find if I keep doing something and I just feel like every time I try to do it, I'm continually blocked. Like I was doing something on YouTube the other day, and all of a sudden it was like my power went out. And then when I would try to restart it, the power went out again. And I'm like, all right, there seems to be some kind of a message here. Of course, it doesn't always mean that you shouldn't go in that direction, but it's just weird when certain things like that happen, and they may delay us in something, and sometimes when you're delayed, it's not because the universe hates you. Sometimes you're being delayed because it's like, whoa, wait a minute, stop and think, or maybe it is the right thing that you're doing, but you want to make sure you're doing it at the right time. Now, when I've done live streams on timing before, and the bottom line is timing is different for everybody. And when you try to speak to your guides and things about timing, like, okay, well, when will the outcome come for this? When will this be solved? And you could give them a time frame, and they'll go, yeah, that time frame sounds great. And then the problem is that time frame to you might say, oh, is this going to happen in a week or a month? And they go, yeah, sure. And the thing is, for them, a week or a month could be 10,000 years. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, it's like when dealing in time in that kind of a thing is hard. So really, the only time that really exists that you can work with is the present, and it's an important thing to remember. But the momentum that you have for rather than spending it worrying about what might happen, a lot of times it's we need to kind of redirect that energy into, okay, even if you're not doing anything right away, even if you're just brainstorming, just being like, okay, here's all the possibilities, like what what can I do, what's more possible, and then that's when you have to contact kind of your inner voice, your intuitive knowing, to try to figure out, okay, where, which one of these things is the right thing. And trying to part of it, and again, just getting into the whole meditation theme again, it's kind of like when you have to pull back and think about, okay, am I reacting? Where is this reaction coming from? Is this my inner voice, or is this me just freaking out and acting out of fear? Like, so those are the things that have to be weighed, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. You can't make a blanket statement that, oh, in this case you're just reacting out of fear or whatever. You have to. So which is why we talk a lot about centering and grounding, but it really ends up being the foundation of everything, because if you're always operating from that place, then you're always operating from your own authority, whatever that is. As I mentioned, I do human design charts, and human design, one of the things it tells you is what your inner authority is. Is your inner authority cerebral, mental, logical? Is it emotional? Is it come from the sacrum? Does it come from the instinct? From the gut instinct, which they differentiate from the emotional. But whatever your authority is, that's the space from which you want to make your decisions. So, for example, for me, I have the gut authority, the sacral authority, as a manifesting generator. So that means that when I can feel something, not just, I may have an emotional reaction to something, but if I feel in my gut like, this is probably the way it's going to go, that's the thing that I listen to. because when I don't listen to it, then that, I always find that I'll kind of get that feeling. And mine is sacral. Yes, yours is sacral too. And and that's the thing. You kind of just have to go with that. We can have a rush of emotions about something, but then it's kind of like, okay, so, but you know what? If I'm about to move on something, I'm about to take an action. What is my gut telling me? Is my gut going, wait, don't do that, or is it like, yeah, go, full steam ahead? Go with what your gut is telling you, because that's going to be the most accurate thing. That's where that inner voice is coming from. We always think of an inner voice as being something that's like in our head, right? But it can come from the heart. It can come from the gut. It can come from it. The ancients certainly never talked about the soul or the seat of the soul being the brain. In fact, weirdly, they kind of thought of the liver as being the seat of the soul. At least in ancient Greece, that was at least one of the things one of the centers that they thought. When you read through the Iliad or an ancient text like that, where they are referring to the emotions of different characters, they'll talk about, like, they have 4 different words for heart in ancient Greek, and it depends on what aspect of it. And it says, well, that person's heart was telling them to do this, or their stomach was telling them to do this. Like, there's just different ways of expressing it that have to do with parts of the body and even in the Far East, I think that there also is not the idea that everything comes from the brain. That's a very Western idea. And certainly the brain is is a neural center that we have, just like our spinal column is. But we tend to, I don't know, we tend to think of the other organs as having to do with, obviously, with breathing and digesting and things like that. But they think they are connected to other things that we do as well. And sometimes the way those organs react it tells us something about what's going on with us, or where the issue is. So if you have, for instance, it's in the do panic energy, it's easy to forget about oneness. Yeah, it's it can be right. We forget about, well, yeah, it's what we were saying about field theory too, about how everything is interconnected. We kind of think that we're operating in isolation, and I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because that's another good point that's come up this week. That a lot of times our fear and our our angst about something comes from, it could come from past feelings of neglect or abandonment, but a lot of times we feel like, I'm on my own and nobody cares. Like I'm unto myself and there's no support, there's nothing out there, there's no other. And the thing is, it's just saying, like, I continually will get in those situations, like with the twins card, or I will get like a 2 card that's like, no, or a 3 card actually in tarot, because that's about collaborating with others. It's like, no, look outside, just you. Obviously you have a lot of power in and of yourself, and you don't want to, and you have those qualities and you want to go forward with that. But you also want to recognize that you're part of a system, and how can you work with that system? It's kind of like what we were saying about the waves, how do you work with the bigger system rather than just on your own energy with something? So yeah, right. And you know what, part of that too is that a lot of times, another card that's come up a lot recently with this is in the Zen deck is the morality card. And the morality card is often about, when we think about asking for help from others, we have a morality about it, like, I shouldn't ask that person for help. I can stand on my own. And to a certain degree, yes, that may be true. Like, we have a certain shame about asking people for help, because the culture kind of indicates that we're independent, and I'm independent and I can do it my own way and I don't need the support of somebody else. But the thing is, it's not necessarily that somebody else needs to support you, but every now and again we don't focus enough on the people around us and how they might be able to assist us. Even if they are not assisting us, say, financially or something like that, they might be able to assist another way. Someone might tip you off to, if you're trying to accomplish a thing, someone might say, oh, well, maybe you should call that person. They know a lot about this. Maybe they can help you. There's different ways that you can be, put in the right direction. So yeah, you're right. We have to think about the network. You have to think about the bigger picture that you belong to, and looking at it as an opportunity rather than as, all the places where you're limited. We immediately, because that's what you do. If somebody, let's just say if you have a day where everything goes wrong and then one person says a nice thing to you, you may appreciate that nice thing that person said, but you're going to be like, yeah, but all the other crap happened today. Like, we always focus on the negative things. Or you could have a day where everything goes perfect and one thing doesn't go right, and that's the only thing that you fixate on. I could be on one of my channels, I could get a million like great comments on, and I could get one person who's a jerk, and that's the person you're going to focus on, right? Because we do that. We kind of feel like we're always, and that reflects something that goes on internally, because we with the shadow sides of ourselves, we're always kind of taught that we're not good enough somehow, that we're. So when somebody says something like that to us, you almost feel like it validates that little critic that you have inside, that comes out of that kind of more toxic side of the animus energy, at least in women. And I mean, men have their own version of this as well. But it's interesting, because I think sometimes with that anima energy, this is kind of a side note, when you see men who, for example, dislike women or think that women are all a certain way, even when you think all men are a certain way, sometimes that's actually you're projecting the negative animus or the negative anima in the case of men onto what you don't like. This is the aspect you're having trouble with, or this is the aspect that is critical of you. So you tend to, and again, we understand those things through reflection, through looking at other people. So sometimes we want to look outwards, but it's kind of like, okay, that may be a reflection. And so what really needs to work here, I mean, everybody, like, I don't want to say everybody hates themselves, because that's really an overstatement. But everybody is, like, you are your own worst critic. I guess that's the phrase that they have, right? You are your own worst critic. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much confidence you have. Everybody has that thing where everybody could think you are doing the most amazing thing in the world. And you're going, yeah, but, there's always something where you feel that way. And really what it's saying is, that's the thing where you want to work on. That's why they're saying working on yourself is the most important thing, because that's what helps you to recognize what it is you're capable of doing, and also just loving yourself and accepting that there's going to be times. There was a wonderful thing I saw yesterday. I was watching. I was listening to one of these to a therapist the other day on. I wasn't going to a therapist, but I was listening to one on YouTube. She was talking about catastrophization, and she made a really interesting statement. She said, vulnerability is the ability to accept both failure and success. Okay, so when we talk about making ourselves vulnerable, because a lot of times what we do is we put barriers up against failure. And as a result of those barriers, we never move forward, because we're afraid, oh, well, I'm going to do this thing. And catastrophizing is automatically assuming a bad outcome and then saying, well, then I'm not going to act on it because the outcome's going to be bad and I know it already. When in fact, that may not be the case, So let's see what our reading is for today. But yeah, and vulnerability is something that comes up a lot in readings, where it's like you really need to develop your sense of vulnerability. And, that's really interesting. Yeah, this reading literally goes right along with everything we were just talking about. Okay, so our first card here is the Moon card. It's the past lives card in this deck, okay? So again, this is, I think you can think of this as having to do with your past lives, and it may. It can have to do with ancestral patterns. It can have to do with cultural patterns, the things you're born into, the circumstances around you. But this also may have to do with your own soul and the things that your own soul is going through. But I tend to think of this as like a baggage card in the way that it's presented here. Now, the Moon really has to do with the lack of clarity in traditional decks. The idea that we really can't, a situation that's, the path forward may not be clear. So we're kind of just taking baby steps, right? But the past lives card has to do with all of those patterns that we have, and a lot of them are ones that we're not aware of. And they may be connected to our ancestry in some way, or they may be connected just to the culture that we belong to, and that we, and again, in our past lives, whatever hardships we may have borne on our soul at that time, we may still be living them now, even though the situation maybe that caused them maybe is no longer extant, it's no longer a thing. Now, the inner feeling of which we are unaware right now is the Nine of Pentacles, is the ripeness card, okay? So there's the thing. Something is ripe for the picking, right? It's ripe for, you're just about there. I mean, the 9 is before the 10, right? You're just about there. Inside, you are ready. you have this, the nine of Pentacles tends to be a very independent card. And interestingly, it's a card of security, like financial security, independence, things like that in other decks. But in this deck, it has more to do with the idea that whatever you've been going through, it's like now you're at the point of launching. And interestingly, that can be for a lot of people the scariest point. There's that point of launching, but these kind of past patterns may be standing in our way to some degree. And the external feeling of which we're aware is the guidance card. And this is also the Three of Pentacles. So in addition to having to do with the idea that we know that we are guided, whether it's by our inner voice, whether it's by our guides, however we want to conceive of that, that guidance, the Three of Pentacles, that's also about being aware of others, working with others, right? Remember I was saying the three energies in the tarot have to do with working with other people and getting outside your comfort zone to some degree. I mean, it's, or even just finding out where your support is, finding out where your tribe is, finding out who's going to support you and what you're doing. And this was the card I was literally talking about. This is the conditioning card, okay? This is the lion among the sheep. And this is basically saying, you can do it. This is the equivalent of the devil card in this deck. And what it really has to do with is the way in which we believe that we are only capable of following but not leading. And I think I've talked about the story of this card before, but in case you've not heard it, I'll just tell you what it is really quickly again. The story that's connected with the image on this card is that there's a lion who gets separated from his, I forget what the word is for a group of lions, but anyway, he gets separated from the group and he ends up being raised as a cub by sheep. And so the lion thinks he's a sheep. And at some point there are lions coming through and they're hunting and they see this lion like grazing with the sheep and they go over to him. They're like, it's kind of like, dude, like, what are you doing? And then they're trying to tell him like, you're a lion. And he's like, no, I'm not. This is my family. I'm a sheep, And so they're like, here, come over here. So they take him over to a pond. And he looks at his reflection in the pond and sees that he's not a sheep, that he is in fact a lion. So it's basically saying, yeah, you're not a sheep. Now, mind you, nothing against sheep, but sheep symbolically tend to have to do with just kind of following along with the crowd or doing really that unconscious crowd mentality, the kind of, we're just going to go along the group and what the group says. This is saying, breaking out of that conditioning, okay? Because the card is called conditioning. So this is about breaking out of the conditioning that says, yeah, I've got all these things against me, I can't do it. And then ultimately kind of what we end up doing is we have this miser card again, the Four of Pentacles, which kind of says that we kind of hold our energy, this ripeness that we have gets held inside. We hold it back. And so when we hold these things back, with this, in this way, then we do that because again it's that catastrophization response. It's saying because we believe that we are a sheep and not a lion, because we say, oh, I can't do it, then as a result we end up holding back what we have. Like we end up building that wall around what we have and try to just cling to what we have because we're afraid of taking that risk. We're afraid that we're going to fail if we take that risk. But again, that gets back to the definition of vulnerability. And a lot of times, it's funny, you're talking about vulnerability and we're looking at the image of a lion. But that gets into the idea that we have in our culture too, that in other words, to be a strong person means to be aggressive and forceful. Vulnerability is seen as a weakness, right? Like they talk about your vulnerability, right? Your Achilles heel, so to speak. Where's your area of vulnerability where you could be wounded, But the real strength is being able to say, I'm willing to take the risk whether I'm wounded or not. And we do live in a culture now where people are very afraid of making mistakes. I run into this all the time as a university professor, where I have people who will say to me, I have students who, they get an A- and they're like, but professor, I need an A for my GPA. And I'm like, who cares? There's such a focus here on perfect numbers or perfect things. And I'm like, and also I'm kind of thinking, well, to get the perfect grade, you got to put in the work for that perfect grade. I don't just give A's out randomly unless you've met all the requirements for what the assignment is. I'm going to give you the grade, and generally I'm still fairly generous with grading, to be honest, but I do have students who will fight with me about grades because, and I do have some who will legitimately go, yeah, I was busy, I didn't put the work in, so I deserve the grade that I got. So, you do have people who will do that, but vulnerability is about being able to accept that there's both success and failure, and not letting failure define you, okay? Failures happen. It's one of those things. You win some, you lose some. And it's okay to lose sometimes. It's okay to not, something to not go a certain way, because sometimes when you lose something, it's really because it's trying to put you on the path of something else. If we stay comfortable in a particular place and don't want to break out of that, that's also part of the devil energy too, is that it's that old devil you know rather than the devil you don't know. So we may have these feelings where we are, where we feel that we have to, where we want to take a risk, or we're not happy where we are, or we feel like what we're doing right now is not, that we don't, that we're not satisfied. It's not where we belong anymore. If we feel that the detriments of being in our situation outweigh the benefits, and that it's time for a change. But then, we kind of go, yeah, but, and then there's always some reason why. Oh yeah, but, and a lot of them usually are around stability. It's funny that it's the Four of Pentacles, because this is like a financial thing, like, oh, but at least I have the health insurance, or oh, but at least it's a regular paycheck, or oh, but at least it's this. That's why it's kind of saying you need to, when you're trying to balance authenticity of what you're doing, and we also don't tend to value things that make us human. Okay, we tend to, like, nowadays you hear a lot, especially at universities. When I was talking with my friend a couple weeks ago, he was saying that the school where we go, which is, like I said, like a top humanities school for years, it was like a mini Princeton where we went and got our doctoral degrees. They now all of a sudden they're dropping their humanities programs and saying, well, we have to focus on business courses. I'm like, that is a mistake. That is you kind of saying, well, this is what's going to make the money. But I gave a whole talk on my Katonia podcast yesterday. I'm doing a lot of live streaming these days, but I was talking about my books and my writing, but I was also talking about the way in which people like try to use AI for everything to kind of replace our humanness. To say, okay, we're gonna use AI to create art, to create music, to create writing, and it's like, no, you want to focus on the things that authentically are you, that make you human, that you genuinely have to offer. And we're now living in a space where we're freer to do that than we were in the past. We have resources. You can do things on the internet. You can, and you can do things relatively cheaply. You can get a free Zoom account and do some things. If you want to do more of it, you have to pay a little bit. But we're not talking about something that's necessarily prohibitively expensive to get out there and to do things. We can be on Instagram, and it doesn't. There's no charge to be on Instagram. So. Yeah, so there's a lot of tools that are available to us, and that of course a lot of people use, but we kind of still are stuck in the pattern that we kind of have to do things the same old way. So I think part of looking to this future that we have and transitioning to this future is to think about how can I do things differently? How can I make use of the resources that I have to do things differently, and maybe not just in the same way everybody else does it, or maybe just not in the same way that you've been told, well, this is the way you're supposed to do it. I think that's a lot of what has to be is what's considered right now. So yeah, so there's definitely the idea. Okay, so I think the takeaway here from the reading is, first of all, you have something to offer. Okay. Second of all, you are a lion. You're not a sheep. Okay. You have the leadership. You have the capabilities to do something. and you do have a sense of guidance. You do have a sense of inner authority that always knows the right thing that you're supposed to do. That's the one thing about your inner authority, is that it's not ever wrong. And I don't care what people say. I feel like people sometimes, I think when people make a mistake with that is when their inner authority tells something, they go, oh, no, that can't be right. And then you go off and you do the other thing and you go, you know what, I should have done what I felt in the first place. So yeah. I feel like there's a lot here. And this also, I think what I was starting to say about that is this is about, we tend to have a very, and again, I don't want to get into, I'm not talking about men and women here. We have a very masculine, rationalist worldview that says that everything has to come from the mind, everything has to come from logic, everything has to come from analysis, everything has to come from the numbers. And while those things are important, we're not going to say that they don't have a place. We do that at the expense of what we think of as the feminine, and that's where the vulnerability comes in. Because we think to be vulnerable, because we equate things that are quote unquote feminine with what's weak. Oh, you're being passive. Oh, see, you're taking a time out. But now you're not working, and you need to work to action. Even in our writing, like even as a writer, it's just kind of like, don't ever use passive voice. You have to be clear and use active words. Well, we tend to disenfranchise that, and we disenfranchise the idea of being vulnerable, being open to, to learning, to success and failure. Instead, we just kind of say, oh well, I always have to be acting, and I always have to succeed, and I never can fail. And there's an anxiety about that. If we make a mistake, it's like, oh, I'm a terrible person. I made a mistake. No, it's just going with the flow of things. And like we were saying, I think when I pulled my Wisdom of the Tao card the other day, we got the Way, the Lao Tse card, where it's just kind of like sometimes it will be up in the cycle and sometimes it will be down. And if you're down, you can know it's going to go up again. That's how things are. So I don't know, just some interesting thoughts recently about this. And like I said, I know I'm going through my own things, but I also know other people are going through very similar things, which is why I'm bringing it up as a topic. But yeah, so if you've kind of been in crisis lately, I mean, basically our first central card here was moving, from the dream cards, which was, you don't want to hesitate too much, but you also don't want to move too fast. So it's kind of, take some time out to think, but don't think so long that you don't act, because sometimes you do that. You just stand there in indecision forever, and at some point go with what your gut tells you about acting and moving forward. So anyway, we're at 7:12. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me this morning. I always appreciate that you guys are here, and that you are that somebody's interested in what I have to say. So and this of course will be, as always, I'm going to leave this on Instagram, and then I will also be uploading it to YouTube probably later today. I have a few things going on this morning, but I will try to do that. Oh, you're welcome, Melissa. It was very good. Very glad that you could join me. Thank you to everybody who's joined me and people who joined me a little later and I didn't get to say hello to. And yeah, I will be here again tomorrow morning. And today's election day in the U.S. too. So yeah, I gotta go walk down the street and vote. So anyway, everybody have a great rest of your day. Oh, you're welcome. And you're welcome. And yes, and so I will see you all tomorrow if you can be here. So have a great day. Take care.